Yondu Udonta. Yondu Udonta was created by writer Arnold Drake and artist Gene Coulson, first appearing in Marvel Superheroes number 18 in 1969. Yondu was a blue-skinned alien from the planet Centauri 4, known for his deep spiritual beliefs and his ability to control arrows using sound. Yondu's modern version was created by Marvel Studios for Guardians of the Galaxy in 2014, reimagined from the distant future comic character first seen in 1969. Director James Gunn and actor Michael Rooker brought him back as the blue-skinned leader of the Ravagers, a group of space pirates who lived by their own rules. This Yondu was no noble warrior from a far-off century. He was rough, greedy, and unpredictable. He was introduced as a man who kidnapped a young Peter Quill after the death of Quill's mother, raising him among criminals instead of delivering him to his real father as originally planned. In the beginning, Yondu appeared as a villain. His whistle-controlled arrow made him terrifying, killing enemies with effortless precision. He was cruel in his words, sharp in his threats, and quick to punish betrayal. His Ravagers followed him out of fear rather than respect. To many, Yondu seemed like a father figure twisted by power, a man who kept Peter around only because the boy was useful. His gruffness hid years of regret, but no one could see that yet, not even Quill. Beneath that harsh exterior, Yondu carried guilt. The secret he buried was that he had saved Peter from his real father, Ego, knowing the Celestial killed his own children. Yondu never spoke of this truth. Instead, he built a wall of anger and sarcasm around himself. The darkness of his life came from years of being exiled from his own Ravager clan for child trafficking, a punishment he accepted in silence.
Ravagers don't deal in kids.
I didn't know what was going on.
You didn't know because you didn't want to know because it made you rich.
He hid behind violence because it was easier than showing pain. As the Guardians grew into a family, Yondu's own sense of family began to surface. His bond with Peter evolved from manipulation to protection. When Yondu refused to hand Peter over to Ego in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, his redemption began. His loyalty shifted from greed to love, and the walls he built for decades began to fall apart. For the first time, Peter saw who Yondu truly was, a man who acted like a father all along, but never admitted it. The most emotional moment came in Yondu's final scene. As the planet Ego collapsed, Yondu saved Peter by giving him his only spacesuit and launching him into safety. Floating in the freezing vacuum of space, Yondu's last words to Peter were quiet and raw.
He may have been your father, boy, but he wasn't your daddy.
That line revealed everything hidden behind his years of cruelty. He wasn't perfect, but he had loved Peter as his own son. His death, marked by a Ravager funeral filled with fireworks and music, showed his redemption was complete. In death, Yondu became what he could never be in life: honored, forgiven, and loved. The Ravagers were turned to give him the send-off of a true hero. The once feared pirate found peace through sacrifice, turning the roughest soul in the galaxy into one of its most heartfelt symbols of fatherhood and love. Yinsen. Yinsen was introduced in Tales of Suspense number 39 in 1963, created by Stan Lee, Larry Lieber, Don Heck, and Jack Kirby. In the original comics, he was a brilliant scientist captured alongside Tony Stark by enemy forces in Vietnam. But in the 2008 Iron Man film, Yinsen's story was reshaped for a modern world. He became the quiet, compassionate doctor from Gulmira who not only saved Tony's life, but gave him a reason to live it differently. When we first meet Yinsen in the cave, Tony Stark is broken, physically wounded by his own weapons and emotionally numb from years of arrogance. Yinsen performs surgery to keep shrapnel from reaching Tony's heart, creating a makeshift electromagnet powered by a car battery. That single act keeps Stark alive, but Yinsen does more than fix his body. He begins to rebuild Tony's soul. In that dark cave, surrounded by fear and violence, Yinsen becomes the first person to hold Tony accountable for the consequences of his genius. Together, they are forced to build a weapon for their captors. But Yinsen sees beyond survival. He pushes Tony toward purpose. It's Yinsen who helps him construct the first Iron Man armor, using scraps and desperation as tools. Every bolt, every piece of metal, carries the idea that intelligence must serve something greater than greed. Tony, once obsessed with profit, starts to see what his weapons have done to innocent lives. The darkness of the cave becomes the forge where Iron Man is born, not as a suit, but as a conscience. Yinsen's calm presence cuts through Tony's panic. He never yells, never blames. Instead, he teaches by example. Courage through kindness, wisdom through loss. When their escape begins, Yinsen reveals he has no intention of surviving. His family was already killed. His mission was to make sure Tony lived. His final words are soft but devastating.
Don't waste it. Don't waste your life.
That sentence defines everything Tony Stark becomes. Yinsen dies, buying Tony time to finish the escape, charging into enemy fire without hesitation. When Tony kneels beside him in that cave, hearing those last words, the arrogant weapons dealer finally understands what it means to have a legacy worth dying for. Yinsen's sacrifice doesn't just save a man, it creates a hero. In every film that follows, Yinsen's influence lingers. Tony's decision to shut down his weapons division, his need to protect rather than destroy, his guilt, his drive, all trace back to that cave. When Tony gives his own life years later to stop Thanos, he fulfills Yinsen's wish completely. The man who once wasted his genius ends his story with purpose, proving that the real origin of Iron Man was not in a lab, but in a moment of compassion shared between two prisoners. Yinsen never wore armor, never flew, and never stood on a battlefield of glory. Yet he remains one of the greatest heroes in the Marvel Universe. The man who lit the spark that turned a selfish genius into Iron Man.
Is this the last act of defiance of the great Tony Stark?
Coulson. Coulson began as an unassuming SHIELD agent, a man in a suit who calmly handled situations involving billionaires, assassins, and gods. His role was simple: connect the threads between heroes. But he quickly became much more than that. Coulson represented the human center of a world filled with impossible beings. When Tony Stark built his armor, when Thor arrived from Asgard, when Captain America awoke after 70 years, Coulson was always there, steady, grounded, and professional. He reminded gods and geniuses alike that there were still ordinary people holding everything together. His polite tone, dry humor,
It's an honor to meet you, officially.
and respect for the heroes made him relatable to audiences and characters alike. In a universe of extremes, he was the man who treated superheroes like colleagues instead of legends. But beneath his calm demeanor was danger and dedication. Coulson faced threats he had no powers to survive, relying only on courage and training. He handled alien invasions, Hydra conspiracies, and interdimensional chaos without flinching. His mortal perspective gave weight to every event, because where the Avengers could survive anything, Coulson could die at any moment. And that is exactly what made his sacrifice so powerful. The dark turning point came during the Avengers in 2012. When Loki invaded the helicarrier, Coulson confronted him alone, knowing he couldn't win. He fired a prototype weapon, wounded the god of mischief, but was fatally stabbed in return.
You lack conviction.
I don't think
His final act was to tell Nick Fury that the heroes needed something to fight for.
This was never gonna work. They didn't have something.
Coulson's death became the spark that united the Avengers. The moment his body hit the ground, the team stopped being a group of egos and became a family bound by loss. A mortal man gave them purpose. Coulson's legacy didn't end there. Through the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. series, he was revived using alien technology, returning as a leader to rebuild the organization from the ground up. Even with second chances and impossible survival, Coulson never lost his humility. He mentored young agents, made impossible moral choices, and continued fighting for ordinary people. Each battle carried the same theme: humanity matters as much as heroism. He had brought people together, inspired heroes, and proven that courage was not born from power, but from heart. Phil Coulson's story is not about saving the universe. It's about reminding the universe why it's worth saving. He was the ordinary soul who stood among legends and never flinched. The mortal man who made gods feel human.
I know you've thought so for a long time, but deep down, you're a good man.
Rhomann Day. Rhomann Day first appeared in Marvel Comics in Nova #1 in 1976, created by writer Marv Wolfman and artist John Buscema. In the comics, he was the last surviving member of the Nova Corps, a galactic peacekeeping force. Mortally wounded during a battle with the alien warlord Zor, Day transferred his powers to a young Earth teenager named Richard Rider, creating the superhero Nova. His story was one of sacrifice and duty, the passing of light from a dying warrior to the next generation. When Marvel Studios brought Rhomann Day into Guardians of the Galaxy in 2014, his role was transformed from a tragic mentor into something more grounded and heartfelt. Portrayed by John C. Reilly, this version of Day was no longer a cosmic soldier passing on powers, but a loyal officer of the Nova Corps stationed on Xandar. He wasn't a superhuman. He was an ordinary man doing his best in a galaxy full of chaos. And it was that very humanity that made him memorable. Amid all the wild aliens, explosions, and sarcasm, Day stood out because he cared. When Star-Lord, Gamora, Rocket, and Groot were captured, Day didn't treat them like criminals to be discarded. He treated them like people who could be better. His compassion for Peter Quill and his understanding of their situation gave the Guardians something rare in their world: respect. He was a husband and father who believed in second chances, and that personal life gave Xandar's military an emotional depth that might have otherwise lacked. Day knew the fragility of their order and the vulnerability of his planet. When the Guardians offered to help stop Rhomann, he trusted them, despite every reason not to. That moment of faith, an officer believing in criminals, was what allowed the heroes to unite and save Xandar. The most emotional moment tied to Day came after the final battle, when the Nova Corps began rebuilding Xandar from the ruins of war. Standing beside the newly restored Milano, Day spoke to Peter Quill not as a law officer, but as a grateful man. With quiet sincerity, he said,
"I have a family. They're alive because of you."
That single line carried the full weight of what the Guardians had accomplished. It wasn't about heroics or records being cleared. It was about lives saved. In that moment, Day's gratitude gave the film its most human heartbeat, reminding both heroes and audience that kindness and courage ripple far beyond the battlefield. John Reilly's portrayal gave Rhomann Day something deeper than heroism. He gave him heart. Through humor, kindness, and empathy, Day grounded Guardians of the Galaxy in emotional truth. He reminded audiences that even among space battles and alien empires, what truly matters are the connections we make and the compassion we choose to show. Kraglin Obfonteri. Kraglin was first introduced in Guardians of the Galaxy in 2014, played by Sean Gunn. In the film universe, Kraglin was a member of the Ravagers and served as Yondu Udonta's loyal first mate, though his origins in the comics date back to a completely different character from Tales to Astonish number 46 in 1963. The cinematic Kraglin became an original creation of the Marvel Studios version, a loyal right-hand man shaped by brotherhood, loss, and growth. From the beginning, Kraglin lived in Yondu's shadow. He was part of a crew of thieves, smugglers, and outcasts who followed Yondu not out of fear but out of respect. His role was quiet but constant. He organized missions, steadied the crew, and carried out orders with unwavering faith. Even when Yondu's decisions seemed cruel or reckless, Kraglin trusted him. He saw the loyalty beneath the anger, the heart behind the harshness. In many ways, Kraglin understood Yondu better than anyone else. But loyalty in the Ravagers came with pain. During Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Kraglin's trust was tested. He briefly sided with Taserface and the mutinous Ravagers who turned against Yondu, frustrated by his leader's protection of Peter Quill. Yet the moment Kraglin saw the betrayal spiral into cruelty, he was overcome with guilt.
"I didn't mean to do a mutiny. They killed all my friends."
Watching his captain imprisoned and humiliated broke something in him. When he finally helped Yondu escape, the regret on his face said everything. He had realized too late that family, even one built on mistakes, was all he had. After Yondu's death, Kraglin carried that guilt like a wound. The man he had called captain and brother had given his life to save the galaxy. Kraglin was left with the weight of that loss, and the arrow. Yondu's Yaka arrow and fin became symbols of legacy. Kraglin's clumsy attempts to master them were more than training. They were grief in motion. Every whistle, every mistake, every spark of pain was his way of keeping Yondu's spirit alive. In Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Kraglin finally stepped out from Yondu's shadow. He found confidence not in perfection, but in remembering Yondu's lessons. During the final battle, when the Ravagers faced destruction, Kraglin heard Yondu's voice in his mind, guiding him.
"Use your heart, boy."
That simple line turned his struggle into triumph. He finally controlled the arrow, not through force, but through emotion, the very same bond Yondu had always hidden behind rough words. That moment completed Kraglin's arc. He wasn't just a follower anymore. He had become a reflection of Yondu's best qualities: bravery, loyalty, and love disguised as toughness. His leadership of the Ravagers carried the warmth and humor Yondu once gave the crew, ensuring that his captain's memory never faded. Kraglin's story is one of redemption and remembrance. He began as a man who followed orders and ended as one who carried a legacy. Yondu gave his life to save the boy he raised like a son, and Kraglin kept his captain's spirit alive in every action that followed. In the vast emptiness of space, he made sure the Ravagers still had a soul, and that Yondu's heart, once hidden behind rough words, continued to guide them all. Groot, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 version. In Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, released in 2014, Groot was introduced to the modern audience as a member of the Ravagers, working alongside Rocket Raccoon as his partner, protector, and muscle. This version of Groot was based on the reimagined Flora Colossus from Planet X, a sentient tree capable of regenerating, growing his limbs at will, and forming protective barriers. Unlike the original 1960s monster version, this Groot was gentle, loyal, and deeply empathetic, despite his limited speech, which consisted only of the phrase,
I am Groot!
Director James Gunn and Marvel Studios reshaped Groot into a creature whose simplicity conveyed purity rather than emptiness. His three-word vocabulary was voiced by Vin Diesel, who recorded the line thousands of times in different tones to express varying emotions. The creative choice made Groot instantly recognizable and endearing. Every repetition of, "I am Groot," carried different meanings depending on his tone, body language, and Rocket's reactions, giving the character surprising depth without dialogue. Within the story, Groot served as the heart of the team. When Peter Quill, Gamora, Drax, Rocket, and Groot were thrown together in prison, Groot's actions demonstrated quiet compassion and selflessness. He rescued his friends from danger without hesitation and followed Rocket's schemes with unwavering trust. His ability to grow, extend, and harden his branches made him essential in combat and defense, giving the group both strength and protection. Groot's most defining moment came during the climax of the film. As the Milano crashed during the battle against Rhomann the Accuser, Groot sacrificed himself by encasing his teammates in a protective cocoon of branches. When Rocket cried that Groot would die, Groot simply said,
We are Groot.
the only time he ever spoke in a complete sentence. This moment revealed his understanding and love for his friends, transforming him from comic relief into the emotional core of the team. Although he was destroyed, Rocket salvaged a piece of his body and replanted it. The final scene showing baby Groot dancing in a pot symbolized rebirth and hope. This version of Groot became one of the most beloved characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, combining innocence, humor, and sacrifice in a single form. His portrayal in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 redefined him permanently, turning what was once an obscure alien tree into one of Marvel's most iconic heroes.